I don't think anything in the whole of human history is going to put the squeeze on the human race quite like climate change. It is going to affect every single one of us. It's going to be horrible, and it scares me. You know, it scares the hell out of me. We've got to do something about it. Simple.
Everyone had told me that getting a job in conservation was impossible, but I just decided that that's what I absolutely have to do. I'm Hannah Needham and I'm Heal Rewilding's Operations Director. Heal Rewilding is a tiny charity we launched in March 2020 by accident right at the start of the pandemic on a mission to raise money, buy land and rewild it. And originally I was brought in to just lead the youth panel and help her set that up, and then I just started thinking and saying, oh, I don't suppose you've thought about this, have you? And I don't suppose you've thought about this, and just made myself really useful. We never thought the donations would come in to pay somebody, and they did. I conveniently was there at the end of my contract with another charity, had made myself very useful, and luckily managed to be the first person to be employed by Heal, which was great.
When I came to this land, there was almost no biodiversity here. We're in Somerset, we're on my rewilding project. It's a 3.5 acre site. It's something which I've been doing for just over a year now. I've taken a former pasture which had been mown for quite a few years, and I've basically been applying rewilding principles across the site and seeing what I can do to bring back the biodiversity here. I'm Chris Gorn. I'm the founder of How to Rewild, which provides guides for people to find out how to do practical rewilding. I also work for EcoSudis, which is the UK's leading rewilding consultancy. I made an interesting decision, which is that I remortgaged my flat. It might not be the best decision, but it was one which worked for me and my family. I wanted to spend more time in the outdoors with my kid. Remortgaging my flat freed up that money, which allowed us to buy this land. It's really exciting. We've been able to spend lots of time together out here. I've been really enjoying spending time planting trees, restoring the nature to this part of Somerset.
On the day Heal was launched, it just blew up. Originally we advertised 12 volunteer jobs, and within 3 weeks we had 170 volunteers. Like, it was booming, it was massive. It became really obvious very quickly that donations alone wouldn't fund land at big enough scale. We're looking at lending. Triodos Bank really early on were supportive of what we were doing, so there were conversations right from the beginning of, you know, this could be a potential avenue of a loan from them. And then Direct Line Group as well appeared and said, love what you guys are doing, can we help? We've got 460 acres, all very similar, former pasture. We're really lucky that we've actually got quite a lot of variety. So we've got hedgerows, we've got trees, we've got a spring, we've got 3 sections of river, and it's quite clay soil. So we've already been talking about when we get our livestock, we're going to try and look at breeds that are lighter. For example, like Dexter cattle, nice and light, so they won't sink in the mud.
There are two different perceptions of rewilding in the public eye. One of them is that rewilding is going to save us all and that it's this fantastic means of restoring the entire landscape, and we should do it everywhere across every single farm, every single bit of landscape, which is a flawed way of looking at it. The other alternative is that rewilding is going to destroy us all and it's going to remove all productivity from our landscape, which again is a flawed way of looking at it. The truth is, rewilding is not perfect and it kind of falls in the middle. The way which the public look at it needs to sort of reflect that nuance, and the way which people who work in rewilding talk about it needs to reflect that nuance as well. We need to communicate that it's not a cure-all, it's not the panacea, it's not something which is going to be applicable to every single landscape.
We thought we really need to find a way of explaining what our version of rewilding is, because it really is a spectrum and it's so different. I thought, right, let's do a flow chart, like a real step-by-step of how we're going to make decisions. Is the problem going to fix itself naturally? Say with beavers as an example, there are beavers upstream of here and downstream of here. So it wouldn't make sense for us to invest time and money in reintroducing beavers here, because the likelihood is within 10 years, if their habitat's right, they might return on their own. The principle is always, can nature do it? Is nature going to do it in the next 10 years? And we say 10 years just because of the nature and climate crisis. So we need to act now. If nature can do it on its own, we want nature to do it on its own because it does it way better than we do.
There's always been this burning desire to be in nature. With climate change and then our effect on the world, that has brought me to this point where I don't want to have a bigger impact than is necessary. I am setting up a life for myself where I'm off-grid, but living a bit closer to nature. I think my initial understanding of rewilding was like tree planting. I think there's planting loads of trees everywhere, and there's a lot of projects about tree planting now, which is fantastic. And when they do tree planting projects, you might hear these figures like 60,000 trees planted. You think, brilliant, it's a drop in the ocean, we need miles more than that. But it's a lot more than that. You've kind of got a whole system from top to bottom with apex predators right down to, you know, the algae in the water. Everything is part of an ecosystem which doesn't need human management. If I was to restore a woodland to the point at which you can look after yourself, I'd kind of be very tempted to sort of think, right, well, let's get humans out of the way. We'll introduce this, we'll introduce that, we'll restore this, restore that. Humans are here though. We are nature, we are part of nature, we are natural. So where do we fit into that? And I think there's a much wider sort of understanding of rewilding, which is about embracing your wild nature, embracing nature, embracing the wild, being a bit wild. We don't all have to fit into boxes.
To me, rewilding is this buzzword that has been introduced as a way to get attention, gain funding, but rewilding has been going on in the oceans for decades. It's just that term hasn't been given to it before. My name is Sarah Tubbs, and I am a marine mammal scientist and conservationist. I'm a PhD researcher at Newcastle University. I'm the founder of the non-governmental organisation Kory Ocean Life, and I am a councillor for the Green Party. From my work in Cambodia and prior work in the Mediterranean, I have witnessed all kinds of species get accidentally caught in fishing nets. These species may be dolphins, they may be dugongs, they may be rays, they may be sharks, whale sharks, turtles. There's so many different marine megafauna that are getting caught every single day, and they're not the intentional catch of these fishermen, but the gears are not specific enough for the fish that all these animals get accidentally caught and die. And that's a huge problem because these species are so important for ecosystems to be healthy and balanced. So by removing them, we're really decreasing the quality of the ecosystem.
When the squeeze comes, when climate change really puts the squeeze on the human race, my analogy is get a bag, get a Hessian sack and fill it full of cats and tie a knot in it and chuck it in the canal there. What's going to happen to those cats? The best chance that bag of cats got is if they could all somehow work together and absolutely coordinate and cooperate and work together and try and get to the banking and then get it opening. What they're going to do in reality? They're going to scratch, they're going to hiss, they're going to scratch each other and fight with each other. So not only have they got the problem of the sinking bag and the water coming in and the drowning and all that, but they've got to fight each other. It's exactly what the human race is going to do. But it's going to be horrible. And it scares me. You know, it scares the hell out of me.
When I was 21, I went to Alaska. I spent 3 months living in a little village in the Arctic Circle, and I saw firsthand the effects of climate change up there. I saw polar bears swimming in from the Arctic ice, and rather than swimming in from 10, 20 miles offshore because the ice had melted so far back, they were swimming in from like 80 miles, 100 miles offshore. The ones which did make it to land were just completely exhausted, and the locals were telling me they'd never seen anything like it. The permafrost was melting all over the place, all the cliffs were like tumbling into the sea. And the airstrip which I tried to land on originally was flooded because of this storm surge, which again the locals were telling me never happened before because all of the sea was uncovered, so the sea ice which usually protected it had disappeared, and therefore the water's being pushed up over the airstrip. They've literally had to invest millions of dollars in order to build a new airstrip on higher land, so it's having an economic cost. That was way back in 2008. It's not like this is a new thing, this has been happening for a long time, but rewilding, if anything, I've seen it having a positive effect. And that's the nice thing about rewilding. I've seen positive changes over the last few years rather than negative changes.
A lot of people would describe the rewilding project as reintroducing big animals or small animals into a place to make it back to this wild scenario. That doesn't seem to make sense for the ocean. You can't just relocate these big animals so quickly. Like, generally, it doesn't work. The way this buzzword is being used in terrestrial terms is because humans are trying to speed up this process in a specific area of land, and it is a technique that could be used, but it's trying to allow this process to happen quicker than it would do more naturally. And could we be causing more harm than good? If we try and interfere to make things happen really quickly, might we be introducing disease? Might we be bringing in species that we haven't really considered about the knock-on effect it will have? If we bring in one species, it might end up eating all of another species, so we lose another species from that area. So it really does have to be thought out well. And if we let it happen naturally, these problems would work themselves out. There would be no sudden introduction. I think sometimes it can work and sometimes it won't, but I don't think it's a new concept.
The local village here already know what rewilding is. It's not an alien concept to them. So the biggest thing for us was to just be clear with our local community about what our type of rewilding was. It's not illegally reintroducing anything. It's not land abandonment. It's not wolves. It's not bears. You know, we're a charity. We're really well governed. We have to do everything within the law. So once we explained those kind of things, most of the fears about rewilding kind of subsided, and actually explained to people that it's not much change. In the long run, we are planning to have cattle, pigs and ponies here, so it will just look like a regular bit of the countryside. We would really like to look at ways that we could create footpaths along our land. We've got this main farmyard that we're in here, and the village is down the road, and actually wouldn't it be nice to be able to connect the two? That was something that was of interest to people, particularly the idea of actually getting the funding to make wheelchair accessible paths, because that's something that there isn't much of around here.
There's been a lot of talk about rewilding, not enough talk about it because so many people still don't know what on earth it is, but there's been talk about it in terms of the ecosystems, but also in terms of like rewilding us as people, rewild ourselves. People come on, for example, a mushroom forage, and we go out for a walk in the woods. It's not just about learning about, you know, what you can eat and what you can't eat. You start to understand how this whole system's working and the ecosystem's working. You get this connection going on between the people, about the connections that are made there in nature, about how we connect with nature, about it all, and all of a sudden everybody feels a bit more part of it and a bit more like they've understood who they are and how we fit into the world, or how we should fit into the world.
Much as rewilding is embracing natural processes, you have to design the interventions at the beginning, and those design interventions have to be sensitive to the way that the site responds to animal pressures, natural forces. It's the wind, it's the weather, it's the water on the site, and so that you're not working against nature, so that you're working with nature. Let's create a habitat which is allowed to evolve over time. Let's create a habitat where natural forces are allowed to take over and humans aren't dictating how it's going to evolve. Those are the ones where, you know, you've got lots of niches and you've got lots of diversity and you've got lots of disturbance and you've got dispersal of animals from the neighbouring environment, and you create this kind of biodiversity from the ground up, and it just keeps going.
The ocean is the world's biggest buffer against climate change. The seagrass, the seaweed and the mangroves are massive carbon sinks. These plant species have the ability to take up all this carbon that is causing such a big problem for the planet. So we need these seagrass meadows, we need these mangrove forests in order to help us buffer against climate change. What you can do at home to make a difference to support ocean conservation is to act sustainably and responsibly with regard to your choices that affects the ocean. If you're purchasing fish, you can make sure your fish is sustainably caught. Tuna labelled as dolphin friendly is not dolphin friendly. It might have a reduced level of bycatch or accidental catch of dolphins, but there are always still dolphins getting caught in tuna fisheries. You can ID whether it's sustainably caught by checking whether it has a certificate on it stating that it is certified as being sustainable by the Marine Stewardship Council.
Nature-led recovery that also tackles climate change is an amazing concept, and of course people are going to hear about it and want to do it. HEAL was set up by people that found out about rewilding, loved it, wanted to do it, and didn't know how. It can be frustrating as well, particularly for people that are maybe later in their career and they find out and they think, God, I wish I'd done that instead. But we can't all retrain and become ecologists or become land managers. Rewilding doesn't really need, we don't need more land managers. What we need is people from all walks of life, whatever skills they have, to support rewilding in their own way. Even if you're doing something on a day-to-day that, you know, maybe isn't thrilling you or isn't of interest, there actually might be a group like us out there who really need those skills or really need that experience.
You can do this in a garden, you can do this on a balcony, you can do this in a window box, and you can also volunteer as well, and volunteering is free if you have enough time to volunteer. It's a fantastic way to just get into nature and to just spend time appreciating the outdoors. It might look grey out here, but honestly, being out in the sunshine in the middle of winter, it's so good for your mental health. Just talking about rewilding to people who don't necessarily know what it is and sharing that information is valuable. You can go on my website and share my website, say howtorewild.co.uk. There's plenty of information there for practical rewilding as well. You could share that with people.
I think the more people are aware of the idea of rewilding, then the more chance there is of those people who are activists on actually instigating change and bringing change about, because the more people are aware of it, even if it doesn't look like the world's changing, if everybody's ready for change and the activists come along and say, let's have change and let's disrupt you and make you think about this, the more that it's likely that that change is going to be received and that change is going to be, you know, putting a bit of pressure in its own way on the powers that be and all that sort of stuff.
Rewilding to me is really about hope for biodiversity. Rewilding is about this practical way that we can reverse the biodiversity decline. It's not let's slow it, it's not let's maintain the status quo, it's how can we actually reverse it, how can we not just reverse it, but reverse it in a really incredible way that brings back biodiversity. I mean, you've seen it here, it's coming back in an incredible, rapidly growing way.
In times of adversity, we will see some terrible things, but we'll also see some brilliant things, and that's when human beings do their absolute sort of miracles. You're not just a little tiny part of this big machine called society. We're all kind of, you know, of course we're a little tiny part of the big machine, but individually we're all wonderful human beings who can make a difference in the world. do think we will do something about it all. I do think that the human race will get its head around it and do something in time for change to be kind of happening and all that. I think the thing that scares me is alongside that there will be a lot of suffering, and I think that's the thing that terrifies me. You can only hope that you're in the right place to kind of avoid that and sidestep it and stuff, but it's hard talking about it because you end up all doom and gloom, don't you? And like, but I think what you've got to remember is that underneath that doom and gloom, it's not really doom and gloom. It's hope, and just clinging on to hope. Because if there wasn't hope, there'd be no point even talking about the doom and gloom. Let's just get on with it and die, you know. No, we've got hope.